Schumacher! It's Schumacher! Incredible!
Max Verstappen, champion of the world!
Hello everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to the first episode of Track Limits by Above the Yellow Line, the official Formula One podcast for ATYL. I'm your host, Dom Joseph, and again, thanks so much for tuning in and spending some time with me today. I'm going to run through as much as I can in our first episode leading into the 2022 FIA Formula One World Championship. Before we get started, start off by saying hello to my mama bear back in Ohio. I miss you. Looking forward to seeing everybody back home soon. But yeah, this is Track Limits. Wonderful opportunity I was given by Taylor Kitchen and everybody at Above the Yellow Line to produce this show, and I'm super excited for it. And we've got a lot of races ahead of us. It's going to be a long season. It starts this weekend, St. Patrick's Day weekend, and will last all the way into November, December area. So it's a long season for Formula One, but I am stoked. I'm stoked for this season. There's so many new things going on. We have a new champion coming into this year, like it or not. There's a lot that happened in last year's championship. I'll touch base on that a little bit. But today it's all about previewing the 2022 season and getting you ready for this weekend's event, which is the Bahrain Grand Prix over in the Middle East. A phenomenal racetrack. And, let's just get right into it. We'll start with the opening headlines, the grid lap, as you will. So here's our grid lap. Here's what we got going on in today's show. We've got all new regulations for the 2022 season. Almost all the rules have been updated, and with that brings brand new race cars. They're going to look entirely different from what they did in the past 4 years or so, and this is the biggest car modification we've seen since the end of the 2016 season. So this is big time for these teams. Some of them have had more time to prepare for these new cars than others. We'll get into that. We've had preseason testing all of last weekend and a couple of weeks before that in Barcelona. But this past weekend, they were in Bahrain, which is where they're racing this weekend. They were testing for 3 days, and in recent years, preseason testing can give you an idea of who the favorites are to win the world title. And we may have gotten that, so we'll have to wait and see. And then we will give you a preview of the Bahrain Grand Prix. It's history, how many laps we're going to run, and who to watch for in this year's race. But now, let's get into it. Let's start with our first topic, and that is the new cars. So again, we've had an entire new set of regulations brought in for 2022, and with that comes new looking race cars. So I'll go one at a time. The specific things you got to look for in this upcoming season that are different from years past, and for those that are brand new to Formula One, I'll kind of give you an idea of what these changes actually mean and why these changes are important for the sport and for the teams. So the first thing we're going to go over is the tires. So here in the United States, everybody knows Goodyear, Firestone. Those are pretty prominent ones. Pirelli is very big. Pirelli is the tire that is manufactured for Formula One races. Pirelli is the official tire of F1. In previous years, we've had Bridgestone in F1. We've had Michelin. We've had both of them at the same time. Goodyear was once in Formula One, but now it is pure Pirelli all the way through. Every team has Pirelli. This year, the tires are going to be low-profile tires, and they are going to be 18-inch rims. And that is a difference from last year, where it was 15-inch rims. So they're going to be bigger tires. And the one important thing that was mentioned about these new tires by Formula One is at speed, tires are known to deform a little bit. And obviously when they're going at speed, going into corners, they can tend to widen out a little bit to gain more grip. But these new tires are going to deform a little bit less at speed than previous years. And that is going to make airflow around the car a lot easier for the engineers to manage, because if the tires aren't going to deform as much as before, and if you can get an idea that the tire is going to look exactly how it is standing still as it is at speed on the track, these engineers and people that work in the aerodynamics of the car are actually going to get a really good chance to figure out how to manage how airflow goes around the car. And if all of this is foreign to you, the goal for Formula One teams is to make their car as slippery as possible in air. And what that means is it wants to cut as clean a hole through the air as it can, because, like it or not, air is weight, and that can hold a car up. It's weight on a car. And the less aerodynamic drag you have on your car, the faster it'll be. The more capable it is of reaching its true potential, its true speed. So now these engineers can see their 18-inch rims, low-profile tires, how almost, not exactly, almost as it would look on the racetrack at full speed. So now they have essentially a cheat code to figure out how the air will get around the car, especially when they go through a wind tunnel. With that, we're now seeing these little covers that are coming up on the inside of the tire that kind of covers a little bit of the top on the front of the tire. And that's one of these benefits for these teams to get an idea of how they can manage the airflow around the car. And the one benefit for us as fans to this is they're punching a cleaner hole through the air, and now there's going to be less wake on the back of the car, because you have to remember, these cars are pushing all this air around them, and it's got to go somewhere at the end of it, so it all rushes off the back of the car, and a car from behind trying to catch that car up front has to deal with that dirty wake. And that really disrupts the car, and in recent years, that has made it very difficult for other cars to get close to one another and make passes and overtake, which is what fans want to see. They want to see racing. They don't want to see follow the leader. So the benefit of these low-profile tires is they can assist in working around the air. It creates less of a wake, which provides us with a lot closer, a lot more exciting racing, more chances for passing. Another big change is the floor of the car. Now again, Formula One cars look absolutely nothing like your four-door sedan or your SUV. These cars are scientifically built for speed, and they will only ever see the racetrack. They're never ever going to be street legal, no matter how hard you try. With that being said, there's a floor on the bottom of the car, and in recent years it has just been a flat floor, almost a perfect rectangle, and it's been very flat on the underside of the car, and all the aerodynamic work that the engineers have put in has been on the top of the floor. But a new rule this year has now allowed for what they're calling a 3D floor, which essentially is making the whole bottom of the car another wing. Because on these cars, I get what you can say is the front bumper of the car is actually a full wing. The front wing of the car, which is very important for pushing air over the tires, just how the engineers want it to do, to make it as clean as possible, as quick as possible. And then, of course, everybody knows the rear wing of the car, the really big, tall structure on the back of the car that helps push the air over the top of the car. And now, the bottom of the car is going to be acting as a third wing, which is going to negotiate how air underneath the car is distributed and how it's pushed outside the back. So the benefit of this is, again, this is going to create a lot less dirty air behind the car, which makes it easier for passing for the car behind that's chasing. This is exactly what us as fans want, especially because many a times in previous years, drivers who start on pole position, or in this case, whoever comes out of the first turn with the lead on the first lap, can sometimes go on to lead every single lap of the race uncontested. So what we want is more battles for the lead, and in general, more battles for position all over the racetrack, regardless of what the position is. So that's a benefit. Now here's a problem with it that popped up in preseason testing, and it's called porpoising, is what they're calling it. If you're looking at the car and want to know what porpoising is, it is when the car's at full speed going down a straightaway, it is bouncing up and down rapidly, and it's a very uncomfortable ride for the driver. So here's the scientific breakdown of it, if you will. So as cars are gaining speed down the straightaways, downforce increases on the car. And what downforce is essentially is as the car is going faster and faster, all that weight from the air is pushing the car down into the ground. And with that creates obviously more grip on the tires, and it goes faster. But the problem with porpoising is the downforce continues to increase because of this bottom wing, because of all the new aerodynamic advantages of these new cars. The downforce becomes so great that the bottom of the car is actually making full contact with the ground. And when that happens, there's no air to go underneath the car. It's trapped. So that air pushes the bottom of the car back up to its original sitting position, and then the cycle repeats. As soon as it goes back up, the downforce pushes the car back down to the tarmac, and then it gets pushed back up by that air underneath the car. So again, basically, the easiest way to describe it is severe bouncing at full speed. And when preseason testing first started, it was brutal how violent the bouncing was in these cars. You'll have to look if you haven't seen it yet. It's a very uncomfortable ride. And I'll get into a little bit of what teams were struggling with that in testing. The one thing that can counter it is something called the drag reduction system. All F1 fans know it as DRS. So DRS can only be activated in certain zones on the racetrack, which are predetermined and are presented to the teams long before the race starts, long before the weekend even starts. And the only time you're ever going to see it is on long straightaways. And what DRS is, obviously drag reduction, it's getting rid of that excess drag on the car. And the one thing that creates the most drag is the rear wing, which is there to have air push off that wing, which then sits the back of the car down. But when DRS is activated, the rear wing will actually open, and air will then just go right through that hole, which then puts a much cleaner cut into the air for the car. It doesn't have to worry about that drag from the wing. When that wing opens, all the air goes through, and the car can actually increase about 7 to 8 miles an hour. So that's been the biggest benefit for passing, and the rule is during a race, you can only activate DRS if you're within 1 second of the car you're chasing. And again, going back to how it can counter, because you don't have that air pushing the back of the car down with the wing, when that letter box opens on the back of the car, it makes the back of the car a little bit lighter, which then prevents a little bit more of that downforce from pushing the back of the car into the track, and then you get a lot less porpoising. What else is new? The nose, the front of the car is a lot longer than previous years, and the front wing is actually going to sit a lot higher off the track than previous years. Obviously, because of wanting to get as much downforce as these teams could, they had the bottom of the car, or the front of the car, I should say, as low to the ground as possible. So when that air is hitting it, it's pushing that down, making it even faster. But now it's going to sit a lot higher. And again, that's just going to benefit passing and whatnot. The engine, for those that are interested in what kind of engine Formula One uses, it's a V6. But the very interesting thing this year, because it's a V6 hybrid, and there's a lot of energy recovery and battery recovery used in F1. They're trying to be as fuel efficient and as environmentally friendly as they can. And the new addition this year is a brand new type of fuel, which is going to be E10, which makes it 10% biosource. And the good news is it's a second generation biofuel, which means it doesn't come from food crops. It actually comes from what is known as a waste crop, which makes it even more sustainable. So that was really cool to read about and to see how F1 is continuing to push forward into the future and trying to create more and more alternatives to gasoline and oil when we eventually run out of it. And lastly, I believe this is my last point on the new cars is the rear wing is going to look a lot different. So originally it was just a perfectly straight up and down rectangle on the back of the car, but now it's very curved on the sides. It's a very smooth roll tip rear wing, and again, it does have DRS. So if you haven't seen the new cars yet, that's a visual representation, if you will, the best I can come up with for you. So that's all I have on the new cars for you. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what has changed since we were in Abu Dhabi last December. So that brings us into a preview for teams in 2022. So if you don't know who races in Formula One, here's the quickest rundown I can give you. Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, an American team called Haas, which is powered by Ferrari. Red Bull has a team known as Red Bull Racing. They were powered by Honda, and this year will be their final year with a little bit of Honda assistance before Red Bull Energy Drink begins producing their own engines for Formula One. And by the way, their driver is the defending world champion, so they're very, very good at what they do. The Red Bull B team, which is called AlphaTauri, which is a Red Bull brand, a fashion brand for Red Bull, and they're also Honda powered, but same deal, they're working towards getting their engines from Red Bull itself. Alpine, which is a French car company. Mercedes AMG. Mclaren, which is a supercar company that started in F1. Aston Martin, another luxury car brand. Williams Racing, which is a very historic F1 program. They're powered by Mercedes. And those are your teams. So let's start with the boys from Italy, Ferrari. Everybody's favorite. And even if you say you don't like Ferrari, you're lying. You love Ferrari. So here's the good news for Ferrari fans. The last several years have been devastating. For those of you that don't know anything about Ferrari and F1, so Formula One started in 1950. 1950 was the first season. Ferrari is the only team that has raced in every season of Formula One, dating back to 1950. They have more wins, more podiums, more pole positions, I believe. They have the most wins, most podiums, most driver and constructors world championships than any other team ever. They have won, one of their drivers has won the world championship 15 times. The team has won the constructors championship 16 times. They've won 237 races. They've been top 3 and stood on the podium 773 times. And they have started on pole position 230 times. Now here's the bad news. The last time a driver won the world title for Ferrari was Kimi Räikkönen in 2007. And before that, it was the 5-peat by the great Michael Schumacher from 2000 to 2004. It has been a long, long time. And they have had incredible talent come through Maranello to try and get them back to the top. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. But here's the good news. They had the most flawless preseason testing of any team. They had absolutely no mechanical failures. They had no issues at all. And the car was quick. I would argue they're the second fastest team on the racetrack right now. So things are legitimately looking up for Ferrari, but it's not guaranteed that they're going to be a true championship contender. Not yet, at least. We have to get one race in to really know if they're legit. But all the analysts say their car is legit this year. So I'm taking that with a grain of salt because I really hope that's true. If you don't know who their drivers are, they have Charles Leclerc from Monaco. He's in his 5th season of Formula One, his 4th at Ferrari. He started his rookie year with Alfa Romeo before being promoted to Ferrari in 2019. He's only 24, and he's in his 5th year of F1. He's won twice, Belgium and Italy in 2019. He's been on the podium 13 times, and he's started on pole 9 times in his career. His average start is around 8th, 7th, and his average finish is around 8th or 9th. His problem is he's got bad racing luck right now, unfortunately. Hopefully he can turn that around. And the other is Carlos Sainz from Spain, the son of Carlos Sainz Sr., who was a rally champion. He's in his 8th season of F1, and he's in year 2 with Ferrari. He started out as a development driver for Red Bull, driving for Toro Rosso, who is now AlphaTauri. Then he moved to Renault, which is now Alpine, a French automotive company. Drove for them for a while, and then did 2 years at McLaren before coming to Ferrari. He's only 27. He's podiumed 6 times, and he averages around a 10th place starting spot and finishing spot. But last year was very impressive by Carlos. Carlos is a lot better than his averages show, and he has been knocking on the door of victory a lot of times. So it's only a matter of time with him. But that's the outlook for Ferrari. Let's move on to Alfa Romeo. The problem with Alfa Romeo is last year they were the 9th best team out of 10 teams. They're not that great, unfortunately. So they are Alfa Romeo, but they're powered by Ferrari engines. And the Ferrari engine package has not been as good as it has been in previous years. Alfa Romeo and Haas are both Ferrari powered, and they finished 9th and 10th in constructors last year. So that gives you an idea of where they stood in terms of pace. So they're a midfield team. They're not looking to be a world champion contender. They're looking to be the best of the rest. And they had speed for the midfield battle in testing, that they were never chasing the top of the charts, and Alfa Romeo knows that they're not going to do that. That's not where they stand. They want to be in that battle for 4th, 5th, and 6th in terms of constructors. The problem that they fought a lot of reliability issues in testing, that they did not get the kind of laps that Ferrari did, who had a completely seamless testing. They were in their garage working on issues on their car a handful of times. The good news is they just got Valtteri Bottas from Finland as one of their drivers. He's in his 10th season, and he just spent 5 years driving for the best team in Formula One as of right now, Mercedes-AMG. And he was very good. He's got 10 wins to his name, 67 podiums, and he started on pole 20 times. His average start is 6th. His average finish is 7th, right on the dot. So he has proven that if you can get him the proper equipment, he can win you races. If Alfa Romeo can give him reliable equipment, he can help them contend for best of the rest. The other side of this, the other driver is Guanyu from China, and he's a rookie. This is his first time sitting in a Formula One car. He did not do any part-time. He didn't get to fill in for anybody in previous years. He's 22. He is a Formula 3 Asia champion, which is the second level up to getting to F1. There's F3, F2, F1, obviously, easy enough. So he was the F3 Asia champion in 2021. He's won 5 times in Formula 2. So he has proven he can win when he's got the right stuff. And he's got the resume to be a Formula 1 driver. So I think Alfa Romeo is going in the right direction. But again, they need to work on their reliability. And for a little bit of background on Alfa Romeo, they're a 2-time champion with drivers. They've never won the Constructors title. They won the Drivers' Championship twice, and that was the first 2 years of Formula One, 1950 and 1951, Giuseppe Farina, and Juan Manuel Fangio. They've podiumed 26 times. They only have 10 wins to their name and 12 poles. So, obviously, going from one extreme to the other, with Ferrari being at the top of their game in everything, every way and shape and form, and then Alfa Romeo reminiscing on the good old days of the 50s. And then the next team is Haas. Stand up, America, because this is your team. Haas F1 team is owned by Gene Haas, who is a billionaire businessman working in automation products. He also owns part of a NASCAR team, Stewart Haas Racing. Everyone for Above the Yellow Line knows who I'm talking about. And he tested the waters of Formula One, and now here he is. It's been crazy with Haas. It's all been unfortunate for them. But they finished dead last year in the Constructors title. But that's because they put, in 2021, they completely, before the season even started, they completely surrendered the 2021 season for the hopes of making 2022 better because they knew the new cars were coming. So they spent all of 2021 developing their 2022 car so that they could have a better shot this year with the brand new regulations than worry about focusing on a car that's going to be useless in 2022. Last year, they signed on 2 rookies. They surrendered their 2 veterans, Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean. Many of you know Grosjean in IndyCar now. Phenomenal story for him. But they had 2 veterans, 2 guys that have sat on the podium before, and they let them both go, and they picked up 2 rookies. One of them was Nikita Mazepin from Russia. Now, Mazepin, number one, he did have the resume to go to F1. He had one in the development series. But the other big appeal was his father. Because F1 is all about money. If you've got the money, you have the chance to be successful. Haas spends around $40 to $60 million a year, which sounds like a boatload of money, an astronomical amount of money. They spend around $40 to $60 million a year on their team budget. Ferrari and Mercedes spend about $600 to $700 million a year on their Formula One programs. And that's why they're so far ahead of teams like Haas, because they have so much more room to work with financially. But Haas brought on Nikita Mazepin and his father, who is a billionaire fertilizer CEO, and he brought in his money to help fund the team. So just like that, you're developing for the future, and now you've got a really reliable partner who's going to bring a lot of financial stability to the team. So things, although they looked terrible in 2021, the future looked seemingly bright. But look what's happened at the start of 2022 between Russia and the Ukraine. All kinds of stuff came out about how Formula One should act with a Russian driver. Should they be punished? Ukraine's Motorsports Association asked F1 to remove all their Russian drivers. And then the Formula One said, we can't just do that. We can let them race, but they can't race for their flag. So they can't race for Russia. But then it came out that the British Grand Prix was not going to allow Russian drivers to participate, which immediately was just pointing the finger at Nikita Mazepin because he's the only Russian currently on the grid. So just like that, Haas knew we're just going to have to use our reserve driver, I guess, for Great Britain. Then more things came out, more regulations, and Mazepin's father could no longer fund the team. And so they dropped Nikita and they dropped the sponsor. So, with that being said, Kevin Magnussen is back, which I think was a really, really smart move because if not him, it was going to be their reserve driver, Pietro Fittipaldi. And I know that name sounds familiar. Emerson Fittipaldi was a 2-time F1 champion. Very big name in motorsports. But Pietro Fittipaldi is very young and I think only has 1 or 2 F1 races to his name, and that was because he was replacing Romain Grosjean after his very terrifying crash in, ironically, Bahrain in 2020. So they picked up Magnussen, who's got the experience and can really be a mentor to the other driver, who happens to be Mick Schumacher, the son of Michael. So I think this was a very good move by Haas. But looking at their testing, because they had more time than anyone else to develop their car, and depending on where you finish in the championship determines how much time you have in the wind tunnel to work on your car. Whoever finishes last has the most time. So when we came to Barcelona, Haas had the most developed car of anybody, and as soon as their car rolled out onto the track, all the other teams started picking it apart and looking to see what they could copy. That's just the nature of the game. But they looked good. They showed legit pace. Kevin Magnussen was the fastest car on day 2. Mick Schumacher was the second fastest driver on day 3. They've got serious pace to compete for best of the rest. Will they? We'll see. Now we move on to Red Bull. And I know my father just turned this podcast off. He doesn't like Red Bull at all. It's very funny. He's not a fan of the Red Bulls after last year. But Red Bull is the defending champions with their driver Max Verstappen. They did not win the constructors title, but to give you an idea of what an energy drink company has brought to the table in Formula 1, here is their track record since joining in the mid-2000s. They have won 5 drivers' championships, one with Max Verstappen. They've won 4 consecutive constructors' championships with Sebastian Vettel from 2010 to 2013. He won all the drivers' championships. Red Bull won all the constructors' championships. They've won 75 races. They've been on the podium 206 times, and they've started on pole 73 times. Not bad for a company that makes energy drinks. Again, last year they were powered by Honda, and this is Honda's technically already out of F1, but they're going to be doing just a little bit of almost tutoring, if you will, for 2022 so that when the time comes, Red Bull will be on their own making their own engines. But they really updated their car over and over and over again during testing. And the reason why is because they were so determined to beat Mercedes last year that they continuously modified their 2021 car. They were so focused on developing that car that they pushed the 22 project aside so that they could put all their eggs into the basket of winning that season, because that was their first chance since 2013 to do it again. So they started on the back foot, but multiple adjustments led to increase in speed. And sure enough, Max Verstappen was the fastest driver at the end of testing. As of right now, they look like the fastest team in F1. Will that be true come the end of the Bahrain GP? We'll see. There's still a lot to figure out. But let's talk about Verstappen again. He is the reigning, defending champion of the world, like it or not. It was very controversial. Not even going to get into it, but he is the world champion. He has won 20 times in his career. He's been on the podium 60 times, and he started on pole 13 times. He averages a 6th place start, averages a 7th place finish, and he's only 24. He's ridiculous. I argue that he is the greatest race car driver on the planet right now. Lewis Hamilton is great. His numbers don't lie. But right now, from what I've seen, I think Verstappen is the greatest race car driver on the planet. Contest it all you want. It's just my opinion. His teammate is Sergio Perez, who started his career with McLaren, and he started at Sauber and then went to McLaren when Lewis Hamilton left McLaren and was not ready for the jump. McLaren really didn't have a good car, and he just wasn't ready for a McLaren. So then he dropped down to a team called Force India, which is now Aston Martin, and really just slowly and methodically showed that he is a consistent, competitive talent in F1 that was just missing the wins. But in 2020, he finally got his first career win, and that was when he was already told he wouldn't be returning to the team. And because of how he drove, how hard he drove in 2020, Red Bull reached out and got him. And sure enough, he got another win in 2021, and he got himself the nickname the Minister of Defense for his incredible job blocking Lewis Hamilton in the championship race last year, allowing his teammate Verstappen to catch up and make it a competitive race. He's a hard-nosed driver, and he's very fun to watch. So beware Red Bull this year, because they've got a chance again. So their B team, AlphaTauri, they are exactly what they sound like. They're the B team to Red Bull. They are not They're nowhere near the level of Red Bull, but they're still competitive. They're really good, a really good midfield team. And their testing was dead silent. I mean, they were quietly fast. Pierre Gasly was very quick. Yuki Tsunoda was very quick, but they didn't blow everyone's socks off like they did last year, and then they kind of fell apart a little bit. But this year, they were under the radar. They were quietly fast. But that's okay. Let them sleep on you so that when the season starts, you can show them what you're all about. And again, their drivers are Pierre Gasly from France and Yuki Tsunoda from Japan. Tsunoda's in only his second season. He averaged around 13th, 12th area. But the good news about Yuki is he started the season off very bad. He was wrecking everything he got into, but he got progressively better as the season went on. There was true improvement out of Tsunoda towards the end of the season. So things are looking up for them. And plus Pierre Gasly, he started with the team and then he got promoted to the A team, Red Bull, and couldn't even get halfway through the season and got pulled from his seat at Red Bull and got demoted back to AlphaTauri. And that next year, he proved them wrong by winning in the AlphaTauri over the Red Bulls. So I love the Pierre Gasly story, and I'm rooting for him. He's a very good talent. But again, this is a team that's probably going to be competing for midfield best of the rest. They finished 6th last year in the championship. So the next team is Alpine, otherwise known as Renault. They're kind of the same. For people that know cars, Alpine to Renault is like Genesis to Hyundai. So Alpine had a very interesting 2021. They brought back a 2-time world champion in Fernando Alonso, who unretired to join the team because he saw the potential they had. And Alonso won his 2 titles with Renault, with this team. So it was kind of bringing him back to where it all started. And they really showed improvement over the year. They got a victory with their other driver, who's also from France, Esteban Ocon. He got his first career win last year in the Hungarian Grand Prix. It was a bit of a chaotic race, don't get me wrong, but a win's a win, doesn't matter. So they showed potential. They showed potential, and they were very optimistic for 2022. They finished 5th in the Constructors' Championship. So things were looking up, but they were, I would put them on the back half of the field in testing. I would put them around 7th or 8th, maybe even 9th. I think 8th fits Alpine pretty good because they had so many reliability issues. They had engine problems. It's just they struggled to really get their footing, and the team just looked dejected. And they never really had any outstanding speed either. So I'm a little concerned about Alpine, and I'll leave it at that. But I think with a driver like Alonso, who's a 32-time race winner, a 2-time world champion, he's been on the podium 98 times, and a guy like Ocon, who's finally proving that he can win in this sport, they've got the right pieces, but they're still trying to figure out the puzzle. All right, let's stop delaying them. Turn on the podcast again, Dad. You're going to like this. Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team. Formula One has never seen dominance like we've seen out of this team. At the end of 2013, Formula One threw out their V8 engines for a V6 turbo hybrid engine, and the turbo hybrid era was born. So from 2014 to 2021 is the window of the turbo hybrid era. Mercedes-AMG won the Constructors' title every year. They are the 8 times consecutive reigning, defending champions of the world. Lewis Hamilton won 6 of the 8 world championships in the hybrid era. Lewis Hamilton is tied for the most world championships of all time with Michael Schumacher with 7. 2008, 2014 and 15, 2017 through 2020 consecutively. And if you ask my dad and a lot of people across the planet, he should be an 8-time world champion. He has the most wins of all time, 103 wins. He has the most podiums of all time, 182 podiums. He has the most pole positions of all time, 103 poles. His average starting position is 3.7. His average finishing position is 4.7 over 16 seasons of Formula One racing. He's been in F1 since 2007 and has been dominant ever since. And it's also pretty impressive where you look at a driver like Max Verstappen, who's the defending world champion. His rookie year was with the Red Bull B team because he had to prove that he can drive in F1 before he could get to a big team like Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton's rookie year was with McLaren, and his teammate was the brand new two-time defending champion Fernando Alonso, who just joined the team from Renault. And he was better than Alonso. He was better than him. This team is unbelievable. They have completely dominated Formula One. And that's why a lot of people have kind of been turned away by F1 just because, especially in 2020, with the W11, which will go down in history as one of the top 3 greatest, most dominant cars of all time, with, I would put the Ferrari F2004 and the F2002 up there, and then the McLaren MP44, which, again, this is all foreign to anyone who's never watched F1 before. But these are cars that they could not lose if they were on the track. The only way they wouldn't win is if they wrecked. That's how good they were. But people weren't watching F1 because they didn't have to. They just knew Mercedes was going to start on pole, Mercedes was going to win, and it was probably going to be Lewis Hamilton winning the race and ultimately the world title. But last year, for the first time in really a long time, they had legit competition in Red Bull, and it went down to the wire with them. But I digress. Lewis Hamilton has a new teammate this year in George Russell, who has been chomping at the bit for the last 3 years to replace Valtteri Bottas, who was the other Mercedes driver, for that seat, which is coveted. Who else would want to race for Mercedes? Everyone, because it's the best car every year. George Russell proved himself last year. He got his first podium. It really wasn't. It was just because the race was canceled because of rain, and it was based on where they started. Whatever, it's a podium. He's good. He's a very good race car driver. He outdrove what was supposed to be the worst car on the grid. He was a lot better than what the car should have been, and that was impressive. So they showed speed. They were 1-2 at the end of Barcelona testing, and then they made a crazy change to their car. So the sides of the car, they're called side pods, and it's basically, if you've ever looked at an F1 car, it's basically like the hips of the car that stick out on the sides. They're very curved. What they did was they just got rid of them. The back of the car, like, there's no hips. It's just smooth, just flat. But they had a little bit of reliability problems. They had really bad issues with porpoising, which we talked about earlier. Their cars were bouncing like crazy. And Lewis Hamilton came out and said, we're going to be on the back foot this year. We're probably not going to compete for wins right off the bat. That's big time for Lewis Hamilton to be saying, we're not going to be competitive. I can guarantee you Mercedes is bluffing. Because if you've done your homework like I have, he said the same thing in 2017. They dominated. He said the same thing in 2018. They dominated. He said the same thing in 2019. They dominated. He said the same thing in 2020. Top 3 best car of all time. He said the same thing last year. Last year, they did look a lot slower than Red Bull, but they won the season opener anyway. And they still won the Constructors' title. So don't believe that they're going to be terrible. Because they're not. They're Mercedes AMG. 8 times consecutive world champions. And the other thing, too, is like all the other teams know that they're bluffing. They're saying, Lewis Hamilton was basically saying, yeah, Ferrari is probably the team to beat. Ferrari and Red Bull are probably the team to beat. And Carlos Sainz for Ferrari was saying they're bluffing. Typical Mercedes. They're saying right now that they're going to be terrible and they're going to start 1-2 in Bahrain. They're going to qualify first and second, and they're probably going to win because this is what Mercedes-AMG does. So that's my rant on Mercedes. I'm a Ferrari fan that is just in turmoil because I'm tired of seeing them struggle against Mercedes. Anyway, next team, another super name in Formula One, McLaren. When you think McLaren, you think Ayrton Senna, the greatest driver of all time. Gone way too soon. McLaren is an unbelievable F1 team. For those of you that don't know McLaren, here's their numbers. 12 drivers' championships, most of them coming between Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost. Niki Lauda won a world title with them. Emerson Fittipaldi won their first world championship. Mika Hakkinen won back-to-back titles for them, which I think, Lewis Hamilton was the last one to win a world title for them in 2008. So they've got incredible names on their resume. They've won 8 constructors' titles. They've got 183 wins, 493 podiums, and they've started on pole 156 times. Now, last year, their main rival was Ferrari. They wanted to take it to Ferrari because McLaren finished third. They were best of the rest in 2020, and they wanted to prove that they made a big-time move signing driver Daniel Ricciardo, who's a multiple times race winner at Red Bull. It's a big name on a big team. And they've got the young Lando Norris, who every year gets better and better, and he is the face of McLaren right now. But they struggled last year. They struggled. They finished 4th behind Ferrari, even though Ferrari didn't win in 2021, and Daniel Ricciardo won Monza for McLaren, and that was a McLaren 1-2. But other than that, they were missing something. So 2022 comes, and they unveil their car, which, by the way, I think the McLaren may be the coolest car, just because of its bright orange and blue colors. It's very vibrant. It's very exciting. And they went to Barcelona, and they were fast. When they first came out, everyone, including myself, said McLaren looks very good. McLaren is going to be scary good this year. But then we went to Bahrain, and that was all gone. It was all gone. They had great speed again, but their brakes kept failing. Their problem is they are struggling to figure out how to cool their brakes because they continue to overheat and then they just fail. And then you have to bring the car back in. And what they were saying is they had a brake failure. They brought in spare parts. They brought in brand new brakes, put them on the car. They were very promising. They went out, they overheated, they failed too. So everything that they had, they were top of the line in Spain. And then they went to Bahrain for the legit test where the public was there and all the media was there, and they tanked. So I'm worried about McLaren because I think they had the worst test out of any team in Bahrain. And that's just because they were unreliable. Unfortunately for them, Daniel Ricciardo contracted COVID-19 and couldn't test at all for them. So Lando Norris had to log over 200 laps for the team by himself. But that's unfortunate for Ricciardo. The good news is he has recently tested negative multiple times and has been cleared to come race on time. He won't miss any practice, no qualifying. He's going to be on time. Great news. Super happy for Daniel and wishing him the best. And glad that he's okay. But his team could be in big, big, big trouble. How many more we got left? We've got 2 teams left. Aston Martin. And now because teams like to incorporate some of their sponsors into their team name, like Ferrari used to be Ferrari Marlboro. Mercedes is Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. Aston Martin now has the longest name in Formula One. They have the longest name in history. Aston Martin, Aramco, Cognizant Formula One team. Just call them Aston Martin. It's fine. I just like to be specific and a perfectionist, and it never works for me. I'm sorry. So, Aston Martin is formerly Force India, Racing Point, whatever you want to call it. In 2020, they were very good. They were very strong. Their car, so they get their Aston Martin, they get their engines from Mercedes-AMG. And in 2020, because their sponsor was BWT and they love to paint their cars pink, you'll see pink on the Alpines this year because BWT's with them now. But because their car was pink and they were very, very quick and they really did a lot of copying to the Mercedes team, they called themselves a lot of people called them the Pink Mercedes. And they were very good, just like Mercedes in 2020. You know, it's sad though because they got Sebastian Vettel to leave. Well, Ferrari dropped Sebastian Vettel, and they persuaded him to come over for the rebrand of Aston Martin. Vettel was very excited because he saw the potential. He saw how good they were doing in 2020, and then 2021 was just a train wreck. Vettel got on the podium twice, but only one of them counted because of some fuel irregularities of some sort, and they didn't meet the expectations. Is basically what it came down to. So there is a lot on the line in 2022. There is a lot on the line for Aston Martin to really prove, are they legit? Are they what they were in 2020? Was that just a fluke year? They had bad reliability in Barcelona, and they were pretty unenthusiastic in the second session. I mean, in Bahrain, nobody really talked about Aston Martin. But improvements were made. I will say that. You know, they've made improvements to their car since they first rolled out, but they don't jump off the page. They really don't. But again, they've got Sebastian Vettel, 4 times consecutive world champion, 2010 to 2013, but that was all at Red Bull. He's got 53 wins. They're all at Ferrari and Red Bull. He's got 122 podiums. He's started on pole 57 times. Again, this was all when he was at Red Bull and Ferrari. And his teammate is Lance Stroll. Now, a lot of people have opinions on Lance Stroll because his dad owns Aston Martin now. His dad has funded his career. His dad is a billionaire businessman from Canada. But Lance Stroll has proven time and time again that he can drive a race car. He can drive a race car. He's got 3 podiums at a pole position in 5 years of Formula One racing. So he's doing better than most. So you got to give Lance Stroll credit regardless of how much money he's had to work with coming up. It don't matter. He's a good driver. But they finished 7th in the points in 2021. They're looking to do better than that. Will they? I'm skeptical. Finally, last team, Williams Racing. Williams has been in Formula One since the 70s, founded by Sir Frank Williams, who was a driver himself and then turned to ownership. And this team has incredible accolades, 114 wins, 313 podiums, 128 pole positions. They've won 7 drivers' championships and 9 constructors' championships. Very, very impressive for a team that's not a car manufacturer like Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren is now. So yeah, Williams is a historically great team in F1, but recent years, not so much. Not so much. They finished 8th last year. They've got Alex Albon from Red Bull coming to the team this year, and Nicholas Latifi is in his 3rd year with Williams. He's gotten progressively better, but not leaps and bounds. Albon was good at Red Bull, but he wasn't great. Their test showed that they've got great potential, but what I have written down is the team has great potential as long as the car is willing to race. And by that is, if the car holds up, they're going to be good. But they had reliability issues. They had engine problems, mechanical failures in testing. So their car looks really good. It's kind of like McLaren. Again, it's like if they get everything just right, if they can tune everything correctly, they're in business. But they've got some work to do. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's good for now, for preview for the teams. Again, those are all the teams coming into 2022. That's their outlook going forward. We'll just have to see, because again, a lot of these teams like to not show all their cards in preseason testing. Mercedes. So you're really only going to know what kind of car you have at the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix. And that leads us into our preview for the race. The Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix at the Bahrain International Circuit. It is a 3.36 mile track, 15 turns, 3 DRS zones. The race is 57 laps long. Here's your previous winners. This is going to come as a shock to a lot of you, but Sir Lewis Hamilton has won this race 5 times, and he's won it the past 3 years in a row. So he is statistically the odds-on favorite. Sebastian Vettel has won this race 4 times in his career, but that was back-to-back with Red Bull, back-to-back with Ferrari. So unless Aston Martin brings some kind of major upgrade, I don't see him getting his 5th win this year. Fernando Alonso is also a 3-time winner in Bahrain, but that was when he was at Renault and Ferrari, and his last win came 12 years ago. So his last Bahrain Grand Prix win came 12 years ago. But Mercedes-AMG is a 6-time winner at Bahrain. Ferrari is a 6-time winner in Bahrain as well. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those 2 teams comes out. I put a poll on the Twitter account. Be sure to follow us at Track Limits on Twitter. It's @_ then all caps Track Limits _ would really appreciate that. And I try to be as vocal on there as possible. But I posted a Twitter poll on the account. What team would win the Bahrain Grand Prix? And 57% of you said Mercedes-AMG, 29% said Ferrari, 14% said Red Bull, and none of you said another team. So, kind of shows you where the fans are. A lot of you are also intelligent in thinking that Mercedes is bluffing, like I think. So, we'll see. We'll just have to wait and see. Predictions. If there is goodness in this world, Ferrari will win the Bahrain Grand Prix. If I am a realist and not an optimist, Mercedes-AMG will win the Bahrain Grand Prix. My sleeper is Red Bull, but I would love for it to come down between Ferrari and Mercedes-AMG. I would also like for Mercedes to be legitimately not on the pace. That would be great for me. But I would love to see Ferrari beat them straight up like they did in Monza in 2019. But again, I have to be realistic. I really think Mercedes-AMG is bluffing. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to be fast. I don't want to guarantee them winning, but I don't think they're going to be as reliably unstable as they say they are. I really think that's it. I think, yeah, I want to see Ferrari do it. I really do. I really do. But we'll see. Their car is good. It's not the SF1000, which was one of the most disgraceful cars of all time. But we'll see. They've got to get on the track. Again, testing doesn't show you everything. They've got to get on the track. The Bahrain Grand Prix, the lights have to go out, and they have to go racing to see what they've really got. Well, I really want to thank everybody for listening in. I appreciate it. We're finally getting this off the ground. I want to thank Taylor Kitchen and everyone at Above the Yellow Line for the opportunity. This is so much fun. And let me know your picks on Twitter. And comment on our Instagram as well, at Above the Yellow Line, all lowercase, of course, on Instagram. Can't use any uppercase on there. Yeah, let us know who you think's going to win. You can comment under the Twitter poll if you know what driver's going to win. I know I only put down the teams. What driver do you think's going to win for Mercedes? Do you think it's going to be Lewis, of course, or do you think George Russell's going to prove everybody wrong and show that he can win in a Mercedes? If Ferrari wins, is it going to be Carlos or Charles? We'll see. We'll see. Again, follow us on Twitter at _track limits in all caps _ at DomJoseph22 on Twitter as well. At capital D, Dom, capital J, Joseph 22. And then give Taylor a follow as well. She is the official Above the Yellow Line Twitter account at Taylor Kitchen. Great stuff on there too. She's got all of NASCAR covered. So if you're a NASCAR fan listening into Track Limits, check that out as well. But that's going to do it for the first episode. The Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix is this weekend. I'm really excited. Formula One's back. I've been waiting for it, and I really, really hope Ferrari's good this year. But I don't want to get my hopes too high because Mercedes-AMG is doing what they do every year, and that is bluff, that they're slow. So we'll see if it's legit or not. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.